Hi, my name is Francis MacDonald, and I am CEO of Lift Power. Lift is focused on the exploration and development of hard rock lithium deposits, and our flagship asset is our Yellowknife lithium property.
Francis, good to see you in London.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Always like being in London.
Yeah, maybe not in winter. Not too west cold. Right, you're here with the Canadian Symposium. Lots of Canadian companies have rushed over to London to try and do what? What's happening next door?
Well, it's company presentations, I think, trying to invest or to attract capital, which is a difficult thing to do right now. And I hope people are at least a little bit successful.
Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about that. You've got money. Well, actually, here's the thing. You've got a little bit more money because we talked about it last time out, so it's not new news, but, fires stopped, a lot of people doing what they wanted to do. You had a 40,000 meter drill program lined up. But you had to delay a little bit of that. So where'd you get to?
So that's right. So we had to shut down for about a month. There were wildfires around Yellowknife. The city got evacuated, and obviously we did as well. And so we are at about 30,000 meters of drilling completed this year. We'll probably get to about 32,000 meters. We're starting to wind things down right now because we're in the Canadian Arctic. It gets dark in the winter. And when it's dark, you can't fly helicopters. So that's kind of the limiting factor right now.
Right. Okay. And but you got to play catch up. So when's that going to happen?
Yeah, we need to play catch up. So that'll happen in the winter. And we should be drilling again we're aiming for January 10th.
Okay. Not so far.
Yeah.
Not so far. So what are you going to do with all this data? Because we've been seeing the headlines coming out, right? I suspect there's more coming. You seem to be hitting what you want to find. If the grades remain high, they're, I guess, where you thought they would be. So that's comforting, right?
Very comforting for me.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I say it's comforting, but we had a thesis. We've got these outcropping dikes. We're drilling under them. It should be there, and it is there.
Right.
And I think the drilling is showing that. So what are we going to do with all the data? I mean, the goal is the same, is we're going towards an inferred resource estimate. And that will be sometime around August of 2024 next year.
Right. Okay. But my recollection of the last conversation was the end goal here is to get it to production as quickly as possible. You're not here to drill for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
That hasn't changed.
No, that hasn't changed. Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's look at you'll play catch up. Start again in January. Will you drill to that same? You're aiming for 40,000, right? Will you be adding any more to that 40,000 number?
It depends on financing. So obviously we're drilling a lot of meters. It's not cheap. And we'll look at it, do we take more dilution on what's the cost of capital at that point?
Yeah.
We'll probably be looking at it for sure.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of make that assessment in the new year.
Right. Okay. Now it's a difficult market at the moment from all equities out there. Lithium's had a good ride of it recently. Lots of companies want to be lithium companies. In fact, lots of companies who were nickel, gold, and other things wanting to be lithium companies, becoming nickel companies, lithium companies. So, if there's a lot more competition for the dollars when that does come back, what sort of company do you think you represent for honest money?
Yeah. So I mean, the other thing right now is that lithium is at 2-year price lows.
Yeah.
And so the shine has kind of wore off lithium a little bit. But the thing is that I think that the prices, they're just going to go like this, for the next 10 years. And so we're at a trough right now. Lithium ticked up in the last few days. Ganfeng was up 10% in Hong Kong a couple days ago. So looks like at least within the last few days that things are ticking up. So I think that can bring some interest back to the sector.
Yeah.
I don't think the macro story has changed. We've seen OEMs coming in, we've seen M&A deals happening, but I think for generalist investors, everyone's looking for the bottom. When are we going to find the bottom? And I think, or at least I hope, that this is the bottom, and then we're going to see more money coming back in.
Right. Okay. But I guess the question is more about, how do you position yourself ahead of the crowd?
Sure.
Is it simply a case of the grades that you're showing? What do you think you need to be for them?
I think it's the resource potential, the scale of the project, but it's also infrastructure. Because if this isn't a stranded asset, it's not in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
We can get material out of there. So resource potential, infrastructure, but then also I think the speed at which we're doing things is also attractive to people. I mean, we've talked about this, we're not mucking around with one drill rig and saying, oh, we're going to drill this off in 5 years. Like, we're looking to drill this off in, under 12 months to get to inferred.
Right. Okay. And can you do that yourselves?
Yeah.
You think you can?
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So if I look at the market right now, we're seeing a lot of companies talking about, getting strategic partners, and I need to get alternative financing sorted out. The money is hard to come by. What are you hearing? Because obviously you flew out of the gates 100 miles an hour. You found what you thought you'd find. It's all at surface. The grades are good. Lots of imitators. It's a kind of form of flattery, right? So you seem to have everything that you need, but is it enough to kind of get the money that you want?
Yes. We have some big shareholders that would like to own more. But we're getting calls every week of people wanting, 100,000, 500,000, up to 1.5 million shares. So
right.
I think there's a lot of demand there. People see this as a massive opportunity. This is a world-class district.
Yeah.
And for good projects, even in bad markets, there's always money available.
Right. Okay. And I guess what I'm trying to work out is, like, there's a lot of lithium stories out there, and I was trying to work out who are the guys that are most likely to succeed. What do they look like? I get. Okay, you're saying we've got some shareholders. They want more stock because things are, it's doing quite well. Because quite frankly, moving sideways is a victory at the moment with share price, right?
Yeah.
And what's the profile of a good lithium company look like? And I guess in the same breath, what's the profile of a not so good lithium company look like? Why do pegmatites more likely to succeed than brines? We'll start with that.
So a good lithium company, I mean, if you just look at the assets, then, I think coming out with something less than a 25, 30 million ton resource isn't really going to get people too excited at this point. I think you need big resources, because if you're a major mining company or an Albemarle or a SQM or a Rio Tinto, you're not going to go after something small,
right.
And so smaller projects always have that issue, is they're not attractive for a takeout. And if you're going to actually build something yourself, like, do you want to go out and try and build a small mine?
I don't know, but there are no big ones in North America at the moment. There are no big. You mentioned 25, 30 there? 25, 30?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing even at 50% of that at the moment, is right?
Yeah, I mean, Patriot, the James Bay pegmatite that Alchem Livent has.
Yeah.
Frontier has a big resource. But other than that, there's North America Lithium as well.
Yeah.
And but other than that, there's not that much. Mobilon, another one. Sorry.
Okay. You know me. Do you know? Okay.
Yeah.
Getting that. But if I look at some of the development, most of the other development stories, we've obviously got some studies done on this, and got a resource put on these things. Spoke to one this morning, which made a pretty big claim of being, the biggest in North America. But they're sitting at 16 million, I think. Right? So are we saying that, you've got to be careful about, size is important.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean it can't get into production. Maybe it doesn't mean that it won't be economic necessarily, but it's going to be harder.
It depends. You could always put something small into production.
Yeah.
And it could be profitable.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what the market wants. The market wants big, huge potential, blue sky, going to get bigger, this kind of thing. And for big companies, they need big projects in order for it to move the needle for them. So if you're a Rio Tinto, 10 million tons, or let's say you're producing 50,000 tons of spodumene concentrate a year.
Right.
It just doesn't move the needle in terms of revenue. Something like 500,000 tons of spodumene concentrate a year, which is like a sigma lithium, I mean, then you're talking, plus $1 billion revenues. And then that's obviously interesting for a company of that size.
Right.
So it's who's the end buyer, who's the end builder. I think that's important. And then understanding what they're looking for is also important. Like if you have a project that is small, great economics, maybe you want to build it yourself.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll make money doing it. Maybe it's good in a private company.
Yeah.
You're just a spodumene producer. You're selling 50,000 tons a year, and what is that? 150 million in revenue could be attractive, right? But if you want to sell it to somebody else who's going to build it, then I think you need to be looking for world-class, big assets, close to infrastructure.
Okay. Because here's the thing about the lithium space. I think people kind of get excited because the EV stuff, right? They get excited because they understand lithium-ion batteries. So lithium's it's a big clue, right? So
Sure.
they're getting excited, but without actually necessarily knowing too much about the sector in terms of supply demand. We see a few, supply demand gap charts every now and again, and they all look slightly different, and the numbers are slightly different, and the
Sure.
forecast are slightly different. But I don't, for instance, I can't so quickly look at your grades and go, do you know what? That's the equivalent of whatever grade per ton gold, or grade per ton copper, or grade
Sure.
per ton nickel, and that kind of means that they're not able to kind of very quickly assess what a lithium company is worth. So high grade lithium starts where, do you think?
I mean, so it's all dependent on the lithium prices, right? And, geologically, they're kind of between 1 and 1.5%. That's kind of the range.
For high grade.
Yeah, but there's
Right.
not many out there that are less than 1% either, so that's the grade of these things.
You guys also use ppm as well to measure these things. It's sort of very confusing.
Yeah, so that's a good point. There's the Li2O, so
Yeah.
lithia, and it's 2.153 times the parts per million. And so everybody reports it in Li2O.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why that is, to be honest. It comes back from the lab in ppm, but we
Right.
always convert because that's the standard way of doing it.
Right. Percent is just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So somewhere between 1 and 1.5. So it's dependent on what the lithium price is going to do. So you must have a strong, well, you sort of touched upon it earlier. You suspect we're at the bottom now. It's got to move back. It can't hit the dizzy heights that it did before, surely, because it's unsustainable if it bounces around so erratically.
Sure.
Highs to lows. What does good look like in terms of price, LITO price?
I mean, even right now, if you're producing spodumene concentrate at $2,500 US a ton,
Yeah.
you're making money.
Right.
And so get it in production. Sell
Okay.
concentrate right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're okay. But you think this erratic nature of, I guess it's a fairly new market, very nascent in many ways. There's lots of lithium around. If you know how to actually get it out of the ground economically, there's lots of lithium around. And there will be therefore lots of new entrants if the price rises. Right now it's low, it makes it hard for people to get funded.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm sort of saying to you. In moments like these, lulls like this, it's you've got to have a long-term sense of what the price will be.
Sure.
Whereas funding's going to sound awfully expensive for you.
Yeah. I mean, long term, a lot of people are throwing around 20 to 25,000 per ton, and that's for lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide, and it's kind of a 10-to-1 ratio between spodumene concentrate and lithium chemicals, approximately. So, right now we're at 2,500 spodumene, about 25,000 a ton carbonate and hydroxide. So people say that that's the long term, but I think a lot of the time people are just saying that no one really knows. That's the thing. And this is one specific price that's quoted in China as well. Like in Japan, they're still buying it for 40,000 a ton. So even the way that the pricing works is, not many people actually understand how this works. So it is a very new market. It has been driven by China a lot because a lot of the converters are in China. But I think, over time this will change. There will be converters in North America. There will be converters in Europe. And the pricing won't be as driven by China, I think, after a while. Might take a while to get there, though.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But and how does all of this kind of inform the way that you go about it? Obviously, I think the big thing I might take away from each of the conversations is we're getting to production as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
First mover advantage, well, not first mover, but, moving quite quickly in this space is so important to you guys. What do you see as the barriers for this? And what I'm trying to do is a session if people don't understand lithium so well. You've got all that experience, right? You've got all that knowledge and, all that data. So what are the kind of barriers to this industry? How does it sort of trip and stumble and fall or score an own goal, whatever line you want to use?
You mean from a lithium project perspective into production? Or
well, the start is wider than that. The industry as a whole at the moment, what was the kind of biggest barriers to success for people maybe wanting to get into production when then we're talking about production separately?
I mean, in Canada, permitting is the bottleneck.
Right.
And I think if Canada is serious about a critical mineral strategy, we have to look at streamlining the permitting process. And that doesn't mean make it less stringent, but it just means guaranteeing turnaround times, so that we can move quicker.
Right. Okay.
I guess the scale is always going to be an issue because there's new spodumene pegmatites being discovered every week in James Bay. And that's great. Around the Yellowknife district, everything's exposed, everything outcrops. And so we have the biggest ones, but there are hundreds of spodumene pegmatites in the district. So just because someone has discovered a spodumene pegmatite in outcrop doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an economic mine.
Right.
Similar to gold, you could find a quartz vein with a bit of gold in it, and they're all over the place. But to make a real big, 250 to 500,000 ounce a year gold mine, I mean, you need a massive deposit. So there will be lots of big deposits around. Patriot's a great example, not known about, until a few years ago.
Cool.
But that will be a big thing, is having the scale in order to justify a big mine.
Right. As far as you're concerned, the demand is that we've seen so recently, last few months, someone put out a short report on one of the other lithium companies, better not name names. We don't want to get even more of a kicking than they got. There's a bit of, I guess, lack of understanding or uncertainty around the demand numbers and the demand drivers out there. Do you think that has any validity? Do you think that, the group who wrote that short report kind of got any aspect of that right?
Don't think I read the short report.
Okay, well then you don't have to answer the question. That makes it easy. Okay. I was just saying, like, one of your kind of competitors, slightly more advanced than you, but there's a group who
I might
shorter
know.
this. Yeah, right.
And
I think that makes obviously life difficult for them individually, but it also then ripples out and affects the industry as a whole. I'm not quite sure.
If it was a short report that I am thinking of against a Canadian company, it was a horrible short report.
Right.
And everything was, I read it and it was just like, this is just amateur.
Yeah.
And, there's always something you can dig into in a project. Yes, the demand side, obviously there's lots of unknowns. What's going to happen in China?
Yeah.
Is the UK going to backtrack on, banning internal combustion vehicles?
Yeah.
So lots of things could affect the demand side of it. But the way I think of this is that we're on a trajectory, and I don't think the trajectory is going to change. Like, the timelines may switch somewhat, but when you have companies like Volkswagen that's going to invest 190 billion euros into completely changing their supply chain, going to electric vehicles, these guys make the cars, and if they're not selling internal combustion engines, or cars with ICEs, then they're selling electric vehicles, and it will happen. Just a matter of time, I think, at this point.
Right. Okay. So I think my sort of takeaway again from today from you is you talked about scale, and that essence is really important in terms of companies being able to get off the ground, but also speed too, right?
Sure.
So nothing changes there.
Yep. No, speed is really important because there will be enough lithium out there. Recycling will probably come into play at some point. So there is a window here, and we've probably talked about this before. Like, lithium's not like copper, where you can just go down the road and there's an old copper mine and, okay, copper price doubles. Oh, we'll just turn that one on again. You know, we just don't have the resources out there. But eventually, as the exploration business for lithium matures, there's going to be other resources. You know, maybe this one didn't work 10 years ago. Oh, well, now it works, you know, and we'll bring that online. But at this point, we've never needed lithium in these quantities before. And so because of that, no one's ever really looked for lithium specifically. So we have this window, you know, speed to market, very important. Pay off the CapEx, you know, grab market share, things like that. And then it becomes a barrier to entry for a lot of other projects down the road.
I think so. Hopefully a little bit of help from the Canadian government along the way.
That's right.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. And congrats on the project. Seems to be moving on a nice little pace there.
Yeah, we're pushing, and it's full speed ahead.